All right, Steve Yegge, hot take. Let's hear it. What do you got this time?
The death of the IDE.
Oh.
The death of the IDE. That's my hot take. I've been coding for probably the last 10 days since I finished the co-writing our vibe coding book with Gene Kim, which we'll talk about. And I just wanted to get back to coding, right? And I've been coding away, and all of a sudden it occurred to me that I hadn't installed IntelliJ or VS Code yet on this new computer that I was, right? I was like, dang. And I was harking back. I was reminded of my buddy at Anthropic. He was telling me that people don't use their IDEs there anymore, right? They're all using Claude Code to code. They're all using the terminal console-based coding where you just tell the agent what you want and it goes and does it. And then you kind of you review it, but you can review it inline. You don't really need your IDE for that. And so they don't fire it up. They fire it up like as often as you would, pop the hood on your Uber. Open up the Chrome tools in Chrome or something, right?
Wow.
I mean, it's so weird. And I found myself in it too. And so there's my hot take, man. IDEs.
Wow. And this includes text editors, like VS Code, etc. Like all of it. You're just going to be in the terminal, reviewing it inline or in the browser.
I think the IDE will be the thing that helps you manage a lot of those things. Mm-hmm. And the code editor will still be available, but it's not going to be front and center anymore. You know what I mean?
Right.
I think that the focus will shift towards helping you manage multiple agents.
When is this future, Steve? I mean, it sounds like some people are living there, but most of us are not there yet. When is this future?
So I have been just started to play with, Claude 4, which has been out for a week, but I'm a little behind because of the book and everything. So what I wanted to do is extrapolate from Claude 3.7's performance and Claude 4's performance and see if I could, make any projections about where I think it's going to be by the end of the year. Because I have here's the thing is I have a bunch of tests that I can give it. They're not like comprehensive eval suites like a company would run, but I've been struggling with a set of problems that Claude Sonnet 3.7, which is the best coder out there, hasn't been able to get past. Real simple stuff like client server RPCs just really seem to confuse it, or anytime you're going over some sort of network boundary and you're trying to make changes on the client and the server, it was just outside of its sort of cognitive bounds, right? And you could always see it. You could try different prompting. It went on for weeks, and I just found that I had a problem that was slightly too big for it. And I have probably 7 of these now, and I've been giving them to Claude 4. I gave my first one last night, and it just did it, right? It's like, okay, so it's a definite increase. I don't know how much, if it's 20% or 100% yet. But what I can tell you is that the way they're increasing, and from, experts like, Jason Clinton, who's, CISO at Anthropic, he told us, in April that at the IT Rev Forum that, AI has been getting 4x increases in cognitive power for decades. That's been following, it's a function of Moore's law. And the experts, the consensus in the AI community is that there are at least 2 more cycles left in that progression before something changes. It either slows down or AI finds a way to speed it up. But either way, it's going to be 16 times smarter than it is today in June of, mid 2028, right? And what does that even mean? Mm-hmm. What does it mean for it to be 16 times smarter, right? Does it mean it goes from 10 IQ to 160 IQ? I mean, I don't know what it means, but it definitely means they're going to be smarter than us. And so, I got a chance to meet Dario. Did I tell you guys about that? Dario called me in. Yeah, it was kind of cool, right? I was down there in San Jose at that IT Rev forum. Jason Clinton was there. A bunch of people were there. It was really cool. I got to meet all kind of people who were my heroes. I got to meet Kent Beck. It was really cool.
Nice.
And anyway, my buddy pings me and says, "Hey man, Dario wants to meet you." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, cool." So I drive up there and I Uber up there. And I had a nice meeting with him, and it was really cool. And he talked about his vision of the future, right? And how it's going to be, affecting all of us. And I don't know if we're still in hot take land, but boy, did he have some hot takes. All right, so I'll tell you what. We can talk about that if you like, but I want to close out my hot take thing by saying my talk with Dario suggested that they're going to be so good at coding a year from now, call it a year, that, and honestly, it's not going to be like a step function. It's going to gradually get to the point where you're squeezed out if you don't do it this way. If you're trying to code yourself, I don't care how good of a programmer you are. All right. You're a solid brute, solid programming muscle. I get it. All right. But the thing is, these AIs turn you into the brute squad. If you're trying to compete manually against somebody who's got 5 or 6 AIs working for them, you're going to lose. You're going to lose, right? It's going to be like, trying to do the Tour de France without an e-bike. People just don't do it anymore. So that's the thing, right? Is like, that's why I say IDEs are dying, because you will have to start working this way. I'll give you a sneak preview. We talked to the director of productivity, developer productivity, at a big company that you've heard of that's got a big presence in AI, and they said that a fraction of their engineers have started adopting fully autonomous agentic coding with coding assistants, coding agents. Not Cursor, Windsurf, none of that stuff. I'm talking about, there's only 3 right now that are like really big, and then there's Rue and Klein, which are the open source ones. But it's just Claude Code, Codex, and Sourcegraph AMP. Okay, those are the ones that that actually work for you. Most engineers out there today listening to us right now have zero idea what's possible today, what you can do, what I'm doing right now on my computer, which is writing code as we're talking. My babies are all busy. They don't realize it's coming. I'm serious. They're like, you're like this mama bird trying to keep your babies fed, right? They're in the nest going, well, work, right? It's just, that's the new job, man. I'm an agent babysitter. Like, I changed my title on LinkedIn to AI babysitter because that's what I do now. Yeah. Man, the world is changing so fast, and the world's going to push back on it too. That's a really interesting thing that Dario said, was that tech is going to push society harder than society is willing to be pushed. So it's going to cause a big train wreck.
Like Luddite style? Like,
yep.
Yeah. So what are you babysitting over there? I mean, what are your little babies working on?
Well, oh my God, there was one I gave last night. I gotta share this. Everybody has to share this stupid vibe coding story. It starts to get old, right? I gave it this thing and it was so hard and I couldn't believe it, right?
Right.
I'm about to do that and it's kind of embarrassing, but it was a different sort of kind of problem that I gave it. And I was really happy to see that it was so capable of going outside of the bounds of just writing some code for me. So sometime in the last, I don't know, month or 6 weeks, as I was like screwing around with Emacs, bringing it back to be my new IDE, but not for writing code, for managing agents, right? Because Emacs is sort of a tool for managing shells. And so it's really good for that, right? And at some point, my shell, startup time, I have probably 40 or 50 shells running in Emacs at any given time, and I can flip back and forth. They're all CD'd into different directories doing different things, right? So what you really want is to be able to flip back and forth between your agents really fast. It's way better than moving your mouse between terminal windows and stuff, right? So like the shell startup had gone from instantaneous to like, I don't know, 1,000 milliseconds. Like, it was slow. Like, every shell that opened up. So on Emacs startup, which I would open 30 shells, it would like take 30 seconds just grinding through opening shells, right? And it was going to be this tedious, nasty slog of going through thousands and thousands of lines of Emacs Lisp, any one of hundreds and hundreds of functions that could have been the thing that slowed down my shells, right? I mean, like, or slogging through Git to find out all my, I've been changing stuff like crazy. It was going to be like a big project to figure out what was slowing it down, right? So I said, you know what? Screw it. And late last night, before I went to sleep, I gave it to AMP, which is Claude 4, I think Sonnet. It might be Opus. And I was like, yo, just figure out why my shell startup got so slow. Just use Emacs remoting commands, use -q, whatever, but prove to yourself that you've made it faster. Fix the problem and let me know. I come in the morning and I was working and I remembered it. I was like, oh, yeah, one of my babies might be done. And I flipped over to it, fully expecting it to have like completely trashed that directory or something. Because they will often just like, they're like a toddler with a chainsaw on ice skates. It's just like, they're just, you got to be real careful with these things, right? It's a gamble. And also I, having been doing this for a while, have I've started bypassing all permissions checks. I disable all the permissions checks and just let them do whatever they want to do, right? I don't even put them in a Docker container. So I wouldn't recommend that either. So I wasn't sure kind of what wasteland I was going to wake up to. And instead I woke up and it was like, yeah, I figured it out. It was line 600 to 633 of this file right here, where it had fixed a different error around tree sitter grammar setup that had been plaguing me forever. It was also related to the shell startup. And so it fixed all my bugs in Emacs, and it was like, all right, I cleaned it all up and it's all ready to check in now. And I was just like, damn, man, damn, right? this is where we're headed, man. Is like you tell your agent what you need done and it will do it for you. And it elevates you to strategic thinking. It elevates you up to, as we say in our book, the vibe coding book, Gene Kim and I, it elevates you to the head chef of a kitchen where you've got these AI robotic sous chefs, right? That are brilliant and they're somewhat unreliable and untrustworthy. They're erratic. And your job now as a developer, back to the death of the IDE, you're not writing the code anymore. You're a manager now. And you know what? What freaked me and Gene out was that we were using all these Git commands that we had never used before. And we were doing all these things in Git that we hadn't done before. Really weird edge case cherry picks, 3 branch crosses, blah, 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 all this archival and with the AI, but still. And we were like, why are we doing this so much? And we like puzzled through it. Like we puzzled through many questions and problems to write this book. Okay. And we discovered that the reason we were using all of these Git commands that we hadn't used before was that we were managing teams now. We weren't doing individual coding. Individual coding has a certain Git workflow. Managing teams of agents that are working, just to complete that question, I've got the one that works on Emacs. All it does is Emacs. And that agent is sitting in that directory and we have an understanding. All right. That's Emacs.
You're my Emacs, baby.
And then I've got 3 more that are all working on my old computer game because it's a really big, gnarly old legacy code base. And it's a really easy way for me to test the limits of these things and know when they've gone too far because it's my code and I can see when they've done something really wrong, right? Really subtly wrong, maybe. And so one of them is working on bugs, which is basically just random, anything I want it to work on right now. So it's idle about half the time. And then there's one that works on this Node client that's going to replace all of my other clients. And I don't know Node or React or any of that stuff. So I'm building it totally vibe codey style, right? Just like telling it what I want. Hooked it up to Puppeteer, right? Have you ever seen that before? My God. I hooked it. One of my colleagues was like, I was complaining that I kept having to go. I'd fire up my web app and I'd be like, the button's in the wrong place. And I'd go back to Claude Code or, SourceGraph AMP and I'd be like, the button's in the wrong place. And I'd be, oh, okay, I'm sorry. I'll fix it. And it would fix it. I'd go back and it would still be in a different wrong place. Right. So one of my colleagues says, why don't you just use the Puppeteer MCP server? I'm like, okay. So I didn't know what that meant. Puppeteer is a remote control sort of agent that also lets you screenshot. And so I hooked it up and I told Claude, I'm like, go use the Puppeteer MCP server to start doing your development now. And it was like watching like a claymation stop motion. Like it popped open Puppeteer and started working really, really fast. Okay. It looked like a time lapse of an engineer working, except it was going right in front of me. Okay. And it was talking while it was doing it. It was like, oh, look at that. That button's in the wrong place. I better move it. Oh, look, this button's not even wired up. Let me fix the handler for it. And it's just working. Right. It was life changing watching this happen. And I was just like, whoa. I mean, like, seriously. I mean, like, and then of course it wrote, a bunch of garbage. Right. I mean, you have to like temper this with,
right.
They're in a weird sort of, right. They're going through puberty right now. They're in an awkward phase. I don't know what's going on with them, but they're really, really hard to manage. They're ornery and they're not for everyone. So this coding agent thing, I say, oh yeah, it's going to take all the IDE jobs. It's going to take all the, right. All that. I say a year because man, it's going to take that long. Even if the technology didn't change at all, even if the models didn't get any better from here on out, which a lot of people sort of tend to make that assumption, they would still be good enough that all coding would change to use this. Or probably at this point, 70% of coding right now would change to use this, right? 78%.
Because you can build up software around them, guardrails, checks, etc., in order to fix the orneriness or at least manage it, right?
Exactly, Jared. We are engineers and I mean, engineering has been around for hundreds of years. And what engineers do is build reliability on top of unreliability. Right? Mm-hmm. And building those layers in to make, to wrap basically safe wrappers around the AI that we have today would take us a year or two, and then everybody would be using it anyway. But the reality is the models are going to get a lot smarter. In fact, they are going to get smarter than us in the next 2 years. And, there's all sorts of speculation about what that's going to mean. To me, it means we're going to work a lot faster. And that's all it means. So I'm actually excited for it. I'm excited for the tools to get faster, but people are having trouble letting go. They're having trouble letting go. They're like, I like coding.
I do like coding. So I'm one of those people.
I like coding too. Coding's great. Here's the problem, man. Using these agents, okay? Because look, I've written over 1 million lines of production code in my career, right? I mean, like I've written too much code, man. And I know how rewarding it can be. I know how much pride you can have in it. I know that writer's high that you get while you're in the groove. I know all of that. Okay. Unfortunately, for better or worse, whatever, like the coding agents are like a slot machine. They are as addictive as a slot machine. Okay. They have, you pull a lever with every query hoping for a good outcome. Like, please don't trash my Emacs directory. Right. And the potential upside is just incredibly high and the potential downside is incredibly high. And so you get these dopamine hits followed by one more try. It'll get it on the next try. Dude, we had to drag 3 people off stage in April at the San Jose IT Rev Developer Leadership Forum. These were like experienced people, my age, been around, coding since the 80s and 90s, up on stage doing vibe coding demos of stuff that right? And we would have to like go up there and drag them away because they couldn't close their laptops, right? I am so addicted to this multi-agent workflow stuff that I have to have a plan every night to get my computer closed because I need to go to sleep. And so I have to tell myself, okay, what if I just gave them all like something that would take them 15 minutes and ran out of the room, right? It's because as soon as they stop working, you feel guilty. Dude, it's so weird. And that dopamine, man, it never gets old. So like it's like, it's fun to go on a walk, but dogs love to stick their head out the window and, when the car's going 50 miles an hour, because you just get all the smells at once. That's kind of what multi-agent coding is like. Kent Beck said it's like riding a toboggan down a ski slope, right? You're never like really in control. You can steer, right? It's absolutely exhilarating. And and it's also astonishing what they can get done if you have a very, very, very keen, watchful eye on them and you give them the smallest tasks humanly possible. And a lot of other rules that we put into our book. It's a steep learning curve, but once you get there, you'll never go back.
So I guess I think maybe multi-agent is the key then, because I find myself with one agent just sitting there waiting for it to do stuff. And I lose my patience. I'm like, I'd rather be coding because I'm just watching you do it and you're just thinking about it. And so maybe I just need more things going on to not lose my concentration, or what is it? Like, I guess maybe babysitting one toddler, even if they are on ice skates with what'd you say, a flamethrower?
Chainsaw.
A chainsaw. It's just not all that exciting to me. But if I had maybe like a bundle of them, 6 of them, then I'd keep myself busy.
Did you ever play the greatest Assassin's Creed of all time, Assassin's Creed 2? I think it was.
No, I remember the first one, but
it was the one where you had like towards the end of the game, you would get assassins to work for you, and they would go off on missions and they'd assassinate people, right? And I was like, I'm not going to like that because I like assassinating people. Does this sound familiar? And it just, it's so satisfying to, jump off the wall and everything and, onto them. And I was like, this is boring. This is like watching, people golf, right? Why would you? And, it's fun while you're doing it. But then I played that part of the game and found it was incredibly addictive to send all of my agents off on missions, give them instructions. Maybe they'd come back, maybe they wouldn't, maybe they'd die. And for some reason, managing them was like really fun. And they had dialed it in to where like, right. And I'm getting the same vibes from managing multiple agents, right? Okay. It's like, you can give them great autonomy and with every model release, you can give them more autonomy. They can do longer and longer tasks, without your help. And we're getting really close now. There's a lot of people right now, as we're speaking, who have successfully managed to get other agents to do the babysitting for them. Because most of the babysitting you do, actually, we talk about it in the book, is you make them verify their work again in multiple ways, right? Because Well, it's very complicated, but basically they can only do one thing at a time, and they can only do one thing well at a time. So you can't say solve this problem and do it elegantly and write tests for me, because it'll do a half-assed job of all three of those things, because it only has so much room in its context windows, okay, in input and output. And so it will do its best to shape a perfect solution within its constraints to your question. And so what you have to do is you have to say, build this thing. Okay. New conversation. Take a look at this thing. Make me a plan to make it better, to make it elegant. Okay. All right. New conversation. Take this plan and now make it elegant. Okay. Now, first you'd write the tests, then you'd write the code, then you'd make it elegant and so on. But there's these passes that you have to do through the code with the LLM, with the agent, or else it will try to do too much and it will fail and it will piss you off. Right. So it's super frustrating working with these things because they're kind of like humans and you get all these expectations about them and then they go off and do something really weird. Right. You tell them to paint a line in the street and they paint it right over your car, and you're just like, whoa, where's the common sense? So there's a real art to this. And the funny thing is it sounds horrible. It sounds like the worst work ever. Right. It sounds like so much worse than what we used to do, but it ain't. It isn't, right? Because what's happening is you're now the senior engineer. Your expertise is super important. You're a trained engineer and you're looking at the work of a very smart, but still clearly very junior engineer who doesn't really know what you want and can't really look at the whole code base yet and is making best guesses. And you have to guide it and steer it and keep it on the rails. And there's automated ways to do that. There's prompting ways to do that. There's your own personal habits ways to do that. And you got to develop a workflow. It can take months to get into a groove. I made a bunch of terrible mistakes. Gene made a bunch of terrible mistakes. You get overconfident, all kind of, it's a new way of working. And that's really scary to a lot of people.
That's an insane hot take from the IDE.
It is. It all follows from the death of the IDE.
The dopamine hit, though, I think that's something to key in on, because I think that's something that I'm personally experiencing in my journeys, I suppose, is this you said slot machine. I think that's kind of it. It's let me probe it with one more thing, with one more direction, with one more refinement to what we'd worked on previously. Don't do too many things at once. Give me one artifact and then refine that kind of thing. But there is this dopamine hit because it kind of works and thinks not so much faster, because that's obvious that it does, but it thinks in uniquely different ways that our cognitive human minds get overwhelmed or can get more easily overwhelmed. These things can get overwhelmed as well, but when given a task in a way that's do this and just this and come back with that, and it's that volley back and forth like you talked about, that dopamine hit that hits me at least is wow, I'm literally I feel like I am at least. I'm unearthing something brand new, and there's something to that is this new artifact, this new way of thinking, this new model of whatever it might be is now a thing. And I'm making it happen with this magical box, let's just say. But that dopamine hit that hits you, that's what I think is what will drive folks from like you said on stage, you got to prime off the terminal or the machine, because never have we been able to visionary and direct at this pace with this level of clarity and expectation of what it can and can't do. Now, obviously there's, it's gotten better. And as you said, its intelligence will get better. It'll be smarter. But at each iteration, we've gotten faster and faster and better at it. And now with the multi-agent things, if you are a visionary and you can babysit some agents, then that's now your job. And your job is not to write the code anymore. Your job is to direct where the code can go, because you have that higher level expertise that no one else has. The challenge, though, I'd say is the humans that were juniors, or what we've called or traditionally called juniors, how in the world do we get senior engineers? Is the death of the IDE the next thing? Is the next thing after that the death of the senior engineer or the junior engineers? It's just gone because they will never go from junior to senior, or what we've called junior to senior, because there's no path to that?
Gotcha. Okay, so great question. No. Actually, we're going to have more engineers soon. There's a pause right now as people are kind of like figuring it out. And so the market is real shitty for engineers right now because they're trying to figure out how it works. And the AI does have to reach a certain sort of basic level of safety, I think, to be able to roll it out to like 9 to 5 enterprise workers. So we're in a window right now that kind of sucks, but we're headed out of it. There's going to be an explosion of productivity, and it's going to spill outside of software engineering. Okay. The game of building software is about to head into the crowd. All right. Starting with product managers, UX designers, they're all vibe coding right now. I mean, we see it at many companies right now. That's one of the cool stories I wanted to tell you guys. Business owners, marketing, sales. I mean, we're talking about like analysts. All these people are vibe coding. Now, what are they doing? They're, it's the classic cliche, they all need software, but they can't get it from engineering because engineering is busy. Yeah. So they have to go to some SaaS vendor, right? So instead, what we're seeing is that they're replacing their SaaS stuff with in-house products that they built that they wanted to their own spec using vibe coding and AI. And then guess who they went to get it vetted?
Engineering.
They went to a junior engineer, right?
Oh, no way.
Senior engineers were all busy, and the junior engineer was perfectly capable of looking at this Python code that was doing some web server thing, right? And voila, junior engineers, yeah, they may be junior, but they're also engineers. They're trained, right? And that's going to be an incredibly vital role in this new ecosystem where everybody's vibe coding. You're the expert. We see it already.
Interesting. So you're saying that there is hope for the, in quotes, junior engineers out there that are not senior, don't have that, principal engineer title, or never will, or it'll be a long time until they might even have the experience to get there. You're saying that we need those, in traditional terms, junior engineers far more than we ever thought we would in tomorrow's world.
Far more than we ever thought we would. They're going to be fine. There's tons and tons of them. The way that you do, I mean, in a sense, we're all junior engineers again on one axis, which is how the software is actually produced, is changing so much. You as a junior engineer will be able to get to your sort of feeling senior by just paying real close attention to what the AIs are doing and asking them questions and making them explain it to you. That's what I do, right? When I'm making it, when it's doing node stuff and it does something I don't understand, I'm like, so what is that? And just make it say it, right? So that's how you get to be better. I mean, the AIs will eventually be our teachers. You won't learn it from senior engineers, you'll learn from AIs. And so it'll happen. But the really cool part of it is that once people realize that vibe coding is like, it's better than taking pictures. It's better than making movies, even making software. Suddenly now you're a wizard. You can do anything, right? Once this sort of really permeates in, there'll be some killer apps with people and stuff. And largely in enterprise, it's gonna start there, I think, right? Let me talk a little bit, actually. Can I talk a little bit about how this is affecting teams in enterprise? You guys mind?
You said it's going to start in enterprise. I imagine it starts with, individual business startup people. But you're saying it's going to start in enterprise.
Well, I guess there's both going on right now. So it's starting in both. Yeah. Okay. Because the obviously we're seeing, VCs tell us that vibe coding is writing most of the code in startups and so on. But that's engineers. Like, I'm not seeing like my neighbor's vibe coding yet. That would be the sign to me that it's really spilled out there. But I am seeing my neighbor PM's vibe coding. So in that sense, it is actually starting in enterprise ahead. The idea of non-engineers using it to code, all right, to do something real. So like UX designers use it to actually fix the UI instead of putting in a ticket to make the engineer do it. And once you work with it, that's Daniel, our UX designer at SourceGraph. He's doing that. He's badass. Why would you ever want to work with a UX designer that isn't going and fixing the UI instead of tugging on your shirt sleeve, right? And it gives him it gives them agency. He's much happier with his job because he doesn't have to wait on us, right? And we're happier because we don't have to go and implement things for him that feel like, right, they ought to be trivial, and now they are. And so this happens with product managers too, right? They can go and get stuff done without waiting on engineers. And so that sounds like, oh gosh, we need fewer engineers, but ultimately they need a human to be accountable for that software, and they're going to want an engineer to review it. And that's why we always come full circle to everybody's going to need a lot of engineers. And I think that engineers will become a gig economy inside of enterprises. And I don't think it's just engineers. I think that all special skills, specialties, from finance to product management to design, all of them are going to become like a gig economy the way this thing plays out, okay, with everybody vibe coding. Because let me tell you something. Jeff Bezos predicted all of this 25 years ago, okay? The guy was so far ahead of his time, and I had no idea. I worked for him, and we didn't know. So his two pizza teams are making a sort of resurgence right now. Have you heard of his two pizza teams, the Amazon?
Yeah, recently.
This is like your team should be the size where you could feed them all with two pizzas.
You can feed them with two pizzas, but more than that, the team is cross-functional. It consists of a bunch of experts from different domains. Like, you know, it has one person that's a customer service from the CS department, right, to represent the customer, and there's one from product, right, and there's one engineer, and there's one finance, and whatever, and they all work together. You know, one supply chain, whatever that happened, the problem is that they're trying to solve, and they get an objective function. They get a fitness function that they have to define, and Bezos had to approve, that was going to measure. They had to drive it up and to the right. Mm-hmm. And the team that I ran was customer contact reduction. And it was really interesting because we had the sort of autonomy and we had the sort of agency and the authority to go and make the changes that we needed to make to the company. Okay. That's really hard to pull off. And if you don't have a Jeff Bezos there to like pull out and say, well, if you don't do it, Jeff's going to come, right? You can't do that at most companies. You know, it's really hard to get teams to cross-functionally coordinate. That all changes with vibe coding. Okay. Now, product manager, you can put a team together that's a two pizza team, and you don't even need an engineer on it because the engineer can be the AI. Mm-hmm. All of them now have access. You're all junior level specialists in all specialties now. All humans are now junior level specialists because all specialties are available via the AI. Now, you're not a senior level one. You're not able to tell whether the AI is bullshitting you or not. That takes a lot more work and time and effort. But you can get to a basic, like, you know, how often is an engineer needed some help from a designer or needed some help from a business owner or from a product manager and had to wait a day or had to wait a while. And it wasn't a problem specific to their project. It was just a general, I have a product manager question, that kind of thing. So what you do is you use the AI to get all of the stuff done that you need to get that you can get done cross-functionally. And then you go to in each dimension. Security. We already do this today. Security is a great example. They are a consultant organization at every company, fundamentally.
Right.
Okay. Everybody becomes like security. You with me? And people go around at the end of their project, just like at Google, launch engineers were a specialty at Google. And when you're getting ready to launch a new service, you'd go to a launch coordination engineer and you'd be like, yo, LCE, help me. You'd schedule time with them and they would sit down and walk you through the checklists and the playbooks and all that and pre-flights and make sure that you were doing it right. Mm-hmm. Imagine all software development working this way in enterprise from now on. Every team is this two pizza team who is empowered to do whatever the hell they want. They're able to move independently from the rest of the organization. They're decoupled. The blocking is minimal. They can even speak to each other better, guys. An engineer and a PM historically have always been kind of dogs barking at each other because they're kind of set up at odds. And also they don't really speak the same language. There's the old jokes about how, you know, end of day means, you know, Friday means, you know, morning to a PM and evening to an engineer, you know, in a scheduling terms, things like that. Mm-hmm. All of that stuff gets smoothed over and kind of goes away when the PM can kind of sort of query the code base themselves. And they can get engineering answers to engineering questions, and they can even prototype and do engineering exploration by themselves. And then when they come to the engineer, they are so much better prepared to have a conversation, a high bandwidth conversation with the engineer. Same goes the other direction. Engineers don't have to fumble around when they're trying to talk to a UX person or a finance person. Everybody is getting smarter here. Everybody's getting leveled up, but we're all getting more important for each other because in the end, a human has to be accountable for auditing and reviewing all of the work that AIs do. You see?
Yeah.
So to me, it's this massive gig economy opening up. It is so cool. I'm so excited for it.
I'm still not getting this gig economy part. How does that translate into gig economy? You mean
I need a product manager, man.
Right.
We only need a product manager for 1 week on this project.
Okay.
It's going to take, but let's get one for that week. So you reserve one, right? A human. You don't want an AI. You're already using an AI. You want a human to come and look at it. Mm-hmm. That kind of thing. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I see what you mean now. Interesting. So how will that change enterprise then if those folks are all floaters essentially? Can they go from, is there no enterprise for them, or do they sit above all the enterprises and they just gig for all the enterprises?
I think what happens is, so my friend Brendan Hopper, he's a CTO technology at Commonwealth Bank Australia, which is their central bank. He thinks about this a lot. He characterizes this big centrifuge, a centrifuge that's stratifying people. It's been doing it for all of civilization, but it's super fast right now. And the stratification right now, the people that are getting drawn up to the top in enterprise by this inexorable force are the ones who are good at AI. And good at multiple AIs, good at the cognitive overhead of managing multiple work streams at once, and good at dealing with other human beings who are also managing AIs. Those become the most important skills. And it doesn't matter if you're junior or senior or what your credentials are or your degree, whatever. All that matters is, can you use AI effectively? Because some people can, and they're making you look bad if you're not.
Trying to think of an analogy, because I feel like this is burgeoning for us at this moment. And obviously that's why we're having this conversation. But in a year or so, maybe 5 years from now, like, it's just the way. Today, it's managing AIs. And tomorrow, or the future, in the close future, is like, it's just how it works. And I'm thinking like maybe side roads versus like highways. You can get to that side of town with all the back roads, and then they put a toll road in. And it sucks because you got to pay the toll. But it's the way now. That's how you go there. Because who would take the 25-minute route when you can go the 5-minute route? I don't know if that's a 1-to-1, but it's like there's a new way now, and it's just the way.
Yeah, that's fair. That's a good analogy. We likened it to, you got to walk 40 miles across the desert. Would you start walking yourself, or do you just wait for somebody to come along with a car? Because it's coming. Like, if you need to be able to get the AI, but. Yeah, if you look at, we had a really good one, an analogy for this, which is computer graphics. I was in computer graphics in the 90s, and I was looking at the work of people who were in computer graphics in the 70s and 80s, and there was a lot of excitement back then. And if you got too excited about what we were doing at the time, which was rendering polygons, kind of starting to do scenes with lighting and different angles, really early shit, all static, right? If you got too caught up in that and you're like, I like rendering polygons, you were screwed, because all that got moved into the hardware like the next year, right? NVIDIA started doing it in their chips. And gradually all the graphic stuff started moving down into hardware, and you couldn't get too attached to any of it. It just was changing. Like you say, Adam, that's the way it was. There wasn't any fighting it. It just was happening. And what you had to do is you had to change. And so what they taught in school and what they did at work and what they interviewed for all changed in graphics over the last 30 years to where now it's completely unrecognizable. Kids can make mods for Skyrim using these toolkits, Unreal Engine, and all the concerns on your mind as a graphics programmer today are so infinitely higher up the abstraction ladder and more interesting, by the way, than rendering polygons. Okay. That I'm mad at everybody who's holding on to coding right now, because you have so little imagination. All right. And that's probably why you're holding on to it. You're scared because you're going to need some imagination. Because the people who will excel in the new economy where everybody can build is the ones who have taste, the ones who have imagination, and the ones who can make stuff that other people like. And that's scary to a lot of people who all they wanted to do is build stuff that other people came up with.
I saw that similarly to the state of the job market for engineers, is that there's a lot of, and I empathize obviously with anyone in scenarios that are just challenging because of not having a job or not having an opportunity or having to deal with, I've submitted my resume, I've got nothing back, etc. I get that. But this person's perspective was that now engineers, or this market that's sort of saturated with talent and not enough placement, is essentially, now you actually have to network. Now you actually have to know what you're doing. Now you actually have to have taste. And so while you can sort of just skate by with some skills because you can produce something, but now you actually have to involve yourself with and visionary with other humans and collaborate in unique ways. And you actually have to have a network or care about your fellow human beings around you. Like, that's what networking is. Like, I care about you, not because you can get me what I want, but because I care about your life and I ask you about those things and I truly care. And as a result of that, we now have a closer bond. So you give me opportunities you would not give to somebody else because you like me, or I like you, or you care about where I'm going. That people actually have to, I don't want to say it like this, but they actually have to work beyond their skill set. They actually have to work in other bounds and boundaries. Whereas before, it just wasn't as required, and you can sort of skate by.
You know what's funny is all other knowledge work, basically all knowledge work, right? Everybody from doctors, lawyers, FBI agents, school teachers, right? Therapists, dentists, all knowledge workers, dozens and dozens of occupations I could name have continuing education requirements. You have to continue learning to keep your job. Software engineers have never been measured by that yardstick. We have to stay good at our job in order to keep our job, which is actually weaker. You can find jobs where you don't have to learn anything. And that's what a lot of engineers do. They get a specialty. They may be really smart working on really hard problems, but they find like a comfortable sort of sandbox in some company that needs their domain expertise. It could be anything. They could be an SRE. They could be a whatever, but they're kind of like isolated them into this thing, and they never have to learn anything outside of their domain or the sandbox like ever again. Learning is optional. Right? They're good at their job, but they're not learning. Like they don't have to stretch out of their comfort zone. Every other profession does have to, right? Pilots have to train on new airlines or whatever, new plane models, when the old one gets retired, and we sometimes have to like learn new tech, but it's kind of at our own pace and stuff. And so now software engineers that have been dodging that requirement for all these decades are finally faced with this notion that companies are going to expect them to learn how to do this workflow. And I tell you, man, we talked to a director. I was telling you, we talked to a director of productivity at this big company who told us that the engineers there are starting to do this, and they're starting to make the engineers that aren't doing it look bad. Now, this is becoming a serious problem. He says that, okay, let's just arbitrarily, I don't know what his exact numbers are, but let's just say arbitrarily 10% of your engineers they pick up agentic coding and they become 5 to 10 times as productive. Now, what does that mean, 5 to 10 times as productive? Well, the director told us, okay, was that they're submitting, double digits more PRs per unit time than their colleagues who aren't using agentic coding. Now, the AI submitted PRs, they get turned back more often, but the ones that are making it through are dwarfing the work of the people who are doing it by hand. And performance review time is coming. Okay. And this is a serious, serious problem because there's such a discrepancy. It's such a disparity in productivity between the people who have picked up, Cloud Code, Codex, Sourcegraph AMP, right? And given up their IDE and all that other old bullshit they used to do. It's so big that they're going to be embarrassed at performance time, right? What are they going to do? So they're literally sitting down and starting to have HR legal discussions about whether they need to get rid of all of the engineers, which right now are a majority in this big company, who are refused to switch over to agentic coding because it's clear that it has proven itself to be better, and they're refusing to do it because of all the things that you and I have just talked about. It requires you to come out of your comfort zone. It requires you to learn things new, and it requires you to interact with other people, and your job role is going to change. And all those things are they're just unwelcome news to a lot of people. And it's right. And the sad thing is, think about my graphics analogy again. Would you rather be rendering polygons or building Skyrim mods? My God, the answer is so obvious. We're all going to be so much more productive. We're all going to be, and your engineering skills are all going to be incredibly valuable. Trained engineers will be able to do more with AI than non-trained engineers at all times, always. Right? So just like we're headed into an incredible new world. Mm-hmm. Incredible. Stop digging your heels in is my advice to people.
Mm-hmm. Resistance is futile.
And it's not only futile, it's stupid. You're holding yourself back. You're going to have a lot more fun in the new world once you get over the hump.
I don't disagree with that generally. I mean, there's some purists out there, and it's hard because it's such an art and it's so subjective to have this blanket view of it. But I think what I think about, I suppose, is what is the point, right? If you're a software engineer or somebody who's called themselves a software engineer or developer, or whatever you want to call yourself, you have this skill set and you produce results. And that's the point, is to produce some results. But if you sort of resist this scenario, what is the point of the work you do? It's to solve a problem, and it's to solve the problem of somebody who at some point, you've mentioned Jeff Bezos. He's probably one of the most famous visionaries in our time, right? He's so famous, have done so much, and was ahead of his time in some respects, and in many respects, in terms of like 2 pizza teams or predicting AI or whatever. I heard a thing recently that Zuckerberg predicted AI as well, but who didn't? Or no, it wasn't Zuckerberg. It was Chris Wanstroth, actually. It was like a GitHub Universe, like almost a decade ago, where he was talking about one day AI will do X, and like, boom, here we are, you know? But I feel like, what is the point of the work we do as a human race? As this becomes the way 5 years from now, 2028, which is 3 years from now, and if the AI is 16 times smarter or better or faster, or whatever whatever the extrapolation is to go to the betterness, what is the point of our work? What is the point of our work? Is it to do the work, or is it to get the result from the work?
Well, that was a rhetorical question, right? So,
well, it's more than rhetorical. It's more like it's a question that everybody's going to have to wrestle with. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I'm over here wrestling with it. Let me provide a perspective that's slightly different from your guys'. I am not resistant to change. I'm a lifelong learner, and I'm perfectly happy with being results oriented. I'm not someone who identifies closely with the code that I write or anything like that. That being said, I'm having a hard time extracting the value from these tools that you are, Steve, and other people. I also see a lot of the results of the early vibe coding demos and stuff, and the programming horror on the subreddit for, all the horror that's happening. And I'm just not a person who likes to just roll the dice, and I'm getting snake eyes more often than I like. And so I'm with you, and I want this future, and I believe that there's people living there, but you said get over the hump. I haven't been able to get over the hump. I'm using AIs while I code in order to not have to Google, in order to get answers, pasting my errors in there. Like the whole chatbot thing, I'm with it. I've asked I've done single agent, refactor this function for me. Like I'm doing that level thing, but I'm not where you are. So how do we, people like me, how do I get over the hump? How do I get there?
Well, I really wish I could say get my book and read it, because we literally took what you just said, and it's such a common refrain. Everybody wants it to work, but they're struggling with it, right? I mean, it's not like they're all just rejecting it. A lot of people just haven't figured out how to make it work yet.
Right. So it feels like it's wasting my time more than anything else. And I'm like, I'll just write it myself,
Yeah. And so we put a lot of effort in this book, into sort of walking you through at it's very conversational, the book. There's no code in it. And there's no pictures, screenshots of tools or anything like that.
Did you vibe write it?
No. I mean, we started with that in mind, but I hated Claude's writing so much that I insisted we rewrite everything.
I was going to say, you have way too much voice in your writing. I don't think you could allow an LLM to write for you.
Claude's writing makes me physically ill now. I'm allergic to it. I can actually, we should have, how they have those Hemingway, what do you call the fake Hemingway contests, or whatever, or fake GRRM, right? We should have a fake Claude contest, or who can write most like an LLM, because they're really obvious, dead giveaways. So no, we didn't vibe code the book. It's all our voice. And, I think people are going to actually crave that after a while.
Oh, I think so too. I think there's going to be a market for human written things for sure.
Yeah. Bespoke, handcrafted, artisanal.
Right. Just if you're going to be a human, be as human as you can. And people are going to want that, I think especially with pros.
Yeah. Well, maybe there'll be a market for, for a bespoke artisanal code. I don't want code written by an AI. This was actually suggested by a friend of mine over in Krakow. It was her idea. But yeah, who knows, right? The world can go in wacky places
for sure.
We don't predict. But we're in a weird spot, right? In such a weird spot, because man, the answer to your question is it's hard. Is it worth waiting
though? Is it worth waiting? That's where I get is can I wait 6 months and the tools will catch up with everything and it'll be easier?
Depends on who you are.
What kind of response is that?
The proverbial, there's a clip right there, just Steve Yegge sounds.
I like it.
Yeah, I mean, everyone's different, but okay, let's not say Jared Santa. Let's say I'm a mid-level engineer at a insurance company who writes Java 9 to 5, and I got a backlog of Jira tickets. I'm a typical software engineer. Mm-hmm. Do I wait? Do I dive in? Am I vibe coding in my free time? Am I working? Do I have agents working underneath my desk? At work?
Okay, so first of all, you don't do anything that your work doesn't let you do.
Okay.
You should only worry about whether you need to be using agents if you see that other people at your company are using agents above board, getting PRs in, and starting to work that way. As soon as that starts to happen, you're in trouble. Okay. Right. But there's a lot of hurdles for a lot of companies before anybody will get to that point. All right.
Yeah.
The company that told me the story was more advanced, and what they are is more of like a harbinger of what's to come for other companies. But it's probably 6 to 12 months before we get to that same, call it 6 months before we get to where every company has a few people who are vibe coding with agents, and all of a sudden performance review starts to get awkward, right? Because of the delta in performance. So 6 months. So in the meantime, what I would do is recognize that they're kind of too raw to use right now for real work, unless you really want to be kind of out there like me, or some of the early adopters like Simon Willison, right? Don't be like us, be conservative, but learn this stuff, because there will come a time sooner than you think when your company is going to expect that you know how to use it. And the thing is, you're not going to learn it overnight.
Mm.
So start practicing now in your hobby time, your spare time. Here's what you should do. Anything you ever thought that you wanted to do, but it was just a little out of reach, just a little too much of a pain in the ass, just a little low on ROI, right? All those little projects you thought about doing, doesn't matter what it is, okay? Have the AIs do those. Do all of them. Spin up 4 consoles, or 4 terminals, and 4 source graph amps, and just be like, yo, you solve this, you solve this, you solve this, you solve this, okay? There's an art to it, and you will discover it yourself if you're just pushing on it. You don't even have to read a book. You'll figure it out for yourself. There's no math. There's no science. It's an art. You have to learn how to, and the first thing you'll learn is never talk to them. Always talk to the plan. And then copy it out of the plan to them, or make them read the plan. Never talk to an agent directly. There's all these rules that you are going to learn, okay, the hard way, but you have to start now, because it's going to take you 6 months before you feel really comfortable with them. And I'm talking about daily use. And I mean, don't wait for it to prove itself to you. Force it to get the shit done. Hold high standards, hold it to a high bar, send it back to the drawing board 100 times if you have to, but make it work. All right. That's how you get good at this. And that's how you avoid getting fired when your company starts making everybody do this. A year from now.
A year from now. It's coming. Dun, dun, dun.
It's coming.
Okay. Is that the tactical advice you'd give? Because we've been talking somewhat theory pie in the sky. Like, if we was to say get tactical, how do you go today? Besides trying your own, like, literally, where do you go? Who do you look at? Where's the tip? Where's the information coming from? How do you literally get started with agents and babysitting?
I mean, if you're just trying to like get started, I mean, follow Simon Willison, follow Gene Kim, follow SourceGraph. We have lots of good, pointers and tips. I've begun starting to, record my workflow and try to walk people through, how I do it, what you have to keep in mind. I'm going to try to get some way to get some chapters of our book out for people to look at, because there's some really useful tips that we might be able to, you know what I mean? But right now, man, it's so raw, it's so new, that to some extent you just kind of have to try it. But tactically, it's as easy as this, man. npm i-g, what's the shortest one? At OpenAI/codex, and you're a vibe coder now, okay? Because you're literally you and then type codex, and now you're inside, or better yet, let's use source. Codex is a little on the crashy side for me. And maybe it's gotten a little better recently, but the reason I use AMP is not actually because I work for SourceGraph. I was using Claude Code happily until AMP got better for me, if that makes any sense. And the reason I switched over to AMP was that it just, like, you want them to be out of your way. You don't want them to be in your face. You kind of want the agent to just be invisible. You want it to be doing work and not, right? And Claude is really paranoid and really like kind of finicky, and like Claude's always kind of in my way because they're so worried about, I don't know, security or whatever. Sometimes Claude will just be like, I'm sorry, I can't write your file system, or whatever. Weird. Codex crashes. AMP doesn't have any of those problems, so I like AMP, but AMP is really better maybe for enterprise customers. I don't know. I'm not really sure. You can try it. There's right. You can try SourceGraph AMP. Any of the three though. I have every morning when I sit down to work, the first thing I type is update agents. It's a script I wrote that runs npm install on all three of them. Claude Code, Codex, and SourceGraph AMP. You really want to have at least two of those, ideally Codex and one of the other two, because they use different models, right? GPT versus, Claude, right? Mm-hmm. Because when you're vibe coding with agents, sometimes your agent will get stuck and a different model will blast through the problem. And it's completely random. Like some models do better with some other problems, right? Yeah. So tactically, yeah, that's how you get started. Take your favorite pet project, make Claude Code do it. And if, when it doesn't, inevitably you'll be like, what is this? This is garbage. Keep making the problem smaller, right? And smaller and, until you've got it doing one little thing at a time for you and build your way up to where your project's done just by talking to it and sharing a plan with it. Man, that's how you tiptoe into the new world.
Mm-hmm. When you said talk to the plan, don't talk to the agents, talk to the plan.
Yeah.
Can you describe exactly what that means?
Well, sure. The agents have limited context windows that fill up as you're working with them or as they're working. And then they have to compact and it's all 51st dates. They completely forget who you are. And all you've got is this, they watch a little video at the beginning of the session saying what happened. And right. And so the problem with them getting amnesia all the time is that, you have to have persistent memory somewhere of what was going on. And so, your number one goal is, to get all that persistence, into files that you two can both read, which typically is markdown because it's just plain English, mm-hmm. plain text. And, so what you do is you always have it update the plan because the plan is always gradually shifting as you knock things off or you discover things, right? But each agent has its own plan. Each work stream has its own plan. And the agents love to write plans. You can tell them to write plans and they'll write plans so they're blue in the face. And so you have to tell them to clean up their plans too. You have to say this plan overrides all the other plans, so get rid of them or merge them or whatever, right? There's like a lot of your time in vibe coding is actually spent planning. And I mean, literally like working on the plans with the AI or sitting down and dictating, you just dictate it, right? Mm-hmm. You should talk to the AI, not type. The problem with that is that the dictation is not good today at picking up when you're talking about directory names and code, and software names and stuff.
Jargon.
So
yeah.
It's a mixture of the two, but often you can just dictate to the AI what the problem space is that you're trying to solve and then make it come up with a plan from that big mass of words. Okay. And now the plan will expose instantly. If you glance over the plan, you'll say, oh, it was intending to do something wrong. It was intending to do something that I wouldn't have been happy with. So the plan is also a contract. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so yeah, the plan is super important and also they crash or whatever, they get sidetracked. And so if you spend a lot of time typing into one of these things, unless you're using one that has persistent history, they don't all, you just lost all that work. Your computer crashed. So just type everything into your markdown file so you can retrieve it later, or you can take the same prompt and put it into a different agent.
That's what I'm going to ask you. The plan is portable, right?
It's totally portable. It also lets you work across machines. I can go upstairs and keep working. So keep it in source control. In fact, my workflow is four agents right now because cognitively I have not been able to get myself past being able to keep 4 full at once, mostly because I don't code full time. But Emacs is in the middle. That's the control panel. And I think that's kind of a vision of what the future is going to look like is you're going to have a lot of agents working a dashboard, and then you're going to have some control panel that has the plans and the status and some way to communicate with supervisor agents. We talked about this a little earlier before. Remember we started talking about how supervisors can do a lot of the babysitting for you? Mm-hmm. And it's because of all this stuff I just told you that you have to do as a vibe coder with coding agents is you have to do a lot of stuff before with planning, and you have to do a lot of stuff after they do the work with verification. Okay. You verify it, they verify it, you write the tests, you run the tests, you make sure they ran the tests, all these things, not necessarily in that order, but right. Pre and post work, all that stuff is really super important. And a lot of it is mechanical. A lot of it is repetitive. A lot of it is pattern matching. A lot of it can be done by an agent. And so you're like, damn, I could have these 5 agents, right? Because what is my test one doing? My test work stream is the simplest of all my work streams and the most productive. And it can write 10 to 12,000 lines, 15,000 lines of code a day, good tested code in that one work stream, because all it's doing is taking my 500,000 line code base that's 30 years old and writing tests for it, new tests. Okay. No new code, just new tests. So it's very low risk. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I can let that thing jam. In fact, if I could find a way to isolate them a little better, I'm sure I will at some point, I could have many of them jamming, and the instructions are always the same. Are the tests testing all the functionality? Go double check. Are the tests hacked? We could talk about reward hacking all day, but unfortunately, just be aware that these things cheat. Claude 4 does it to 67% less. Now it cheats 67% less, but they still cheat. They were trained on a reward function. They were not trained not to hack that reward function. And so they will say all the tests pass, but they deleted your tests. And so technically they're correct, but they actually passed away.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. These are all things we talk about in the book. They're all things you're going to have to learn as a vibe coder. It's just the kind of facts of life, the birds and the bees of working with LLMs. Yeah.
Can't you put that in like a rules document, like never delete all the tests or something?
Sorry, that just reminded me of Dave Barry. Never stick your finger in that part of the doggy.
Oh my gosh!
It's like raising toddlers, right?
Right.
It's like yes, you can put it in the rules file, but they'll ignore it because they
never ignore the rules file. That's the other rule.
Never ignore the rules file. Yeah, the problem is if you get too aggressive and greedy, you will get greedy. Working with these things, you'll be like, yeah, I can do more and more and more, and you'll get greedy and give them too much, and then they'll start ignoring your rules file. Okay. Because what happens is about once the context window, actually studies have shown there's some initial research seems to show that they start getting confused as early as 3,000 tokens in. But, once you got 50K or 100K tokens in that window, 200K window, they're starting to have to juggle a lot of stuff. And then all of it starts to look important to them. Right. And so, the rules file, it's more of a guidelines file.
Sounds like a real human.
Yeah, they are in a lot of ways. And that's actually a real problem because they're not a real human. And you're going to expect them to act like you're going to get into a groove where you think you're working with a real human, and then they'll make a terrible mistake and do something really weird.
And you can't fire them.
You can't fire them.
You almost want that though, right? Like, don't you want, there's times, maybe it's not exactly a one-to-one with my children, but there's times when I'm surprised by my don't do that, and then they go do something, and then something glorious happens as a result of like curiosity and exploration, right? Like, isn't that something that's like kind of like a good thing in a way to like break the rules and explore?
When it works out well.
If you are neuroplastic and a lifelong learner and adaptable and all that stuff, yeah.
Yeah.
If you're in your comfort zone, you haven't changed in 5-10 years, and you really don't want to learn anything new, then I'm really sad. I'm really sad for you. Genuinely heartbroken, because that's going away. And even though we're saying there's this big theme park and it's wonderful, like, what if you're an introvert? I'm an introvert. Like, believe it or not, I'm not getting energized from this talk. I'm going to have to go like sit in a dark room somewhere. It's costing me energy.
I don't really like you. This is hard.
No, it's great, right? I love hanging out with people and chilling and stuff, but it drains me. Yeah. And if you're that kind of person, and I'm telling you that you're going to have to go and work with a bunch of teams in your new role, you're probably going, well, what the hell, man? Well, okay, but I promise you don't have to work with humans any more than you already did.
There you go.
All right. You're working with AIs. You can boss them around. Okay. And then working with them is a lot like working with human teams. You're going to have some manager skills, like merging their work and keeping them from colliding and keeping them on track and stuff. But it's not the same as managing a human, and it's not that yucky, because managing humans can be kind of icky, right? Because their personal lives can blur into work and all that stuff. None of that is necessary or happens when you're dealing with AI. So don't be scared that you're not going to be able to still be an engineer first and foremost. You'll be an engineer. And you'll be faster. You'll just be working differently. And that's the part that saddens me, is that there's no way around it.
Genie's out of the bottle.
Pandora's box.
You mentioned AMP a bit ago, and I'm curious, who wrote the copy for ampcode.com?
I don't know. I haven't looked at ampcode.com. Is it bad?
Is it bad?
Is it bad?
Should I claim this or not?
It just says everything will change. The heading at the very top change. It's like a manifesto in a way. I mean, I can read it to you, but it's kind of like, it's just talking about, the models yearn for more for the tools and tokens. We as humans hold them back and make them ask before they can change a file. We got to give them the tools and the tokens, and everything changes. What we use them for, how we use them, how many we run at the same time, how they talk to each other, how they talk to you, what they even are. It's all going to change. Like, this is all on ampcode.com. AMP is embracing it, our way of keeping up, ? Shipping. We add and remove every day. We're building for where these models are going. If that means AMP will look differently, completely different 3 months, so be it. If you want long-term support and the same UI in 2032, that kind of just goes on from there. But anyways, it seems like a manifesto. I was just curious if you played a role in writing that, because that's what SourceGraph AMP it points to, is ampcode.com.
No, I wasn't involved in that. But I get where they're coming from. Mm-hmm. We are trying so many different ways to do the messaging. Like, this conversation I'm having with you is an attempt at the messaging, the same messaging, right? Which is mm-hmm. the world's moving in this direction. The manifesto can work. Everybody's going to learn it different. Everybody gets hit differently by these things, right? What works for you might not work for somebody else. And we're not really sure what it is that's going to. We've had a lot of trouble. The skeptics are really out in force, right? I mean, there's a lot of still really, really severe skepticism of this stuff. And look, hey, when I talked to Dario, his vision of the future that he shared with me was a little bit bleaker than what he shares with the public typically. And he and Jason Clinton, his CISO, both make what I would say pretty, what people consider kind of out there predictions about how, right, there will be badged AI employees next year, and that there will be, we'll have switched to using AI for all coding, by the end of next year, and so on. It was still all fairly rosy compared to what he shared with me personally. Okay. He's very worried. He's worried about society. Okay. Because of the stuff we've been talking about. Society doesn't like to change. And we're talking about millions of people having to change in the tech industry. And there's going to be fallout from that. Yeah. And he's worried. He characterized society as the proverbial, the classic immovable object. And tech is the unstoppable force. And when they collide, next year, okay, he calls 2026 the end game, casually, without even any hint of drama. It's going to be a mess. It's going to be a mess. And we're already starting to see it. The skeptics, the people who are sending PowerPoint presentations to their managers saying, we need to stop using AI at this company. We heard that from one Fortune 100 company. We've got people are resisting hard. They're pushing back. They're finding any excuse they can to say, well, maybe for you, but not for me. And that's, I think, the origin of this messaging on AMP code is, look, we're trying every possible way to message this, and people are just they're not listening.
Yeah. The way it ends, I fumble my words, but what it says at the end is kind of interesting and important. It says, if you want long-term support and the same UI in 2032, if you want to spend a maximum of $20 per month, AMP is not for you. If you want to find out where all this is going, come with us. And then it says read the manual. Yeah. And I haven't read the manual yet, but it goes on to ampcode.com/manual.
So AMP is fundamental. We're an enterprise company, mm-hmm. right? SourceGraph is. So AMP is built on the SourceGraph stack. It's a coding agent, but it's got all the SOC 2 compliance and all the way to FedRAMP, and it's got all of the enterprise security controls and auditing and admin controls, and it just goes on and on and on and on. SourceGraph's been around for 11 plus years, and they say it takes 10 years to make an overnight success. If you're an enterprise, you're gonna want an enterprise grade coding assistant. If you're at home, right, use Klein, man. It's gonna bust you. It will break you. You will go bankrupt if you try to do what I just described, to generate 10, 12,000 lines of test code a day. Really, it'll cost you $100,000 a year of tokens. Okay. You can't do it. I can't do it. It's not sustainable or feasible to work the way I've been talking about at home. You can do it at work if your company's paying for it. Use whatever budget they give you. Right. That's going to be one of the big gating factors in this stuff taking off is the inference costs. Yeah.
Well, that's what I remember thinking when I first told Adam, hey, let's get Steve back on the show, because I read your post in March about the rise of the junior developer, or the revenge.
Revenge.
The revenge of. And I read that post and I was like, oh, there's lots of good thoughts here that are, future looking, and you made somewhat black and white predictions, even with timings of like when this is going to happen. And you went through some of the math, and I was thinking like, dang, this is expensive. Yeah.
That's the one. I mean, like, it's ridiculous. It's beyond expensive. Now, we are in the early days where, like electricity and steam were no doubt very expensive to get going when they first came out. And the power that we're harnessing is, of that order of magnitude, change of civilization. So yeah, it's not surprising. But yeah, AMP is an enterprise product, and so use that at work. And then use I would say Klein or Rue code, or maybe there's one or two others that are open source that I've been dying to play with on my Mac M4 Mini that I just got, because I understand that the M4 Mini can just run some of these big llama models. Really excited, and maybe DeepSeek. So I don't know, right? There's going to be look, check this out. This is why I decided I was going to write this book. You are never going to be able to afford the frontier models, right? At home, or probably even at work. Frontier models are for the people with deep pockets. You're going to be able to,
you mean to run them,
to use them, to pay, to be
right, to run them. Yeah. To get the inference from them. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Unless you're at Google or Microsoft or something. Instead, you're going to be paying for cheaper models that can do the same job, but they take longer because they're dumber. All right. They're not as smart. So a perfect example, Opus is really expensive. I believe Claude Sonnet 3.7 is probably a lot cheaper. I haven't looked at the exact numbers, but if you want to save some money, you'll go back to Sonnet for any problem that you can, right? So this game of finding the cheapest model is going to start to get really fun as soon as Llama or DeepSeek or one of these open models is as good as Claude Sonnet 3.7 at coding, because they're getting better too. Right? And at some point, when they're as good as Claude Sonnet, everybody will have unlimited open access to at least one agent at a time, one model running. Okay. Or actually maybe somebody clever can actually have that one model serve multiple agents on your box if they're not, CPU bound. They're probably IO bound, right? Running build tools and stuff. So yeah, there's a future. I can see a future. And by future, I mean, Merry Christmas, Santa's coming future. This year, where engineers will be able to do what I'm doing now for free for the cost of a computer with a GPU, right? Which they already have. Everybody with a gaming computer is suddenly like, I think. So that's how the cost problem gets solved, and it's all predicated on the notion that all of the models are gradually getting smart, well, exponentially getting smarter, and so we will be able to get by with cheaper models. Why? Sonnet 3.7, or a model of that cognitive, power, you can give it the problem, and what they do is they brute force their way to the answer by burning tokens, right? And so they'll find their way there, unless you've given a problem that's just too big to fit in the context window, which is easy to do. But as long as you give them a problem of the right size, they'll find their way there eventually. They're not that smart, so it might take them longer, and it'll cost you more tokens than it would have cost, say, Claude 4. But the tokens are so much cheaper that overall you save money. You see what I'm saying? So like, hey, remember we always used to talk about hallucinations? When's the last time you talked about a hallucination on your podcast?
Well, we still joke about it all the time because of that conversation, but I don't know if we've had like a real one of late.
It's not an issue anymore. At least, I mean, if you're using agents, it's not an issue anymore, because of course they hallucinate, but then they say, oh, that was a hallucination. They detect their own hallucination and they fix it. Right. So that class of problems just kind of went away.
They don't keep making the same mistake. They kind of like, yeah, I've experienced that, where even if it's like a math thing, I'm like, that's off. Oh yeah, you're right. Let me fix that. Sorry about that. And then it's done. It's not like this, I've went down the wrong direction for so long, I'm lost and upset that the thing just took me the wrong direction.
Right.
It's a bit more casually fixed and not an issue.
Well, the move there now is, now that they have tools, that the LLM actually calls a Python program that does some math for it. So it doesn't actually have to do its own math. It can just write the program to do the math, or call a program.
Right.
And actually get predictable results from a stochastic parrot. But
yeah, it's getting a lot better. Well, okay, so tool use that was an example of tool use. right?
Yeah.
Them using tools is like, the biggest game changer since they came out. Because, right, if you've seen the IntelliJ MCP server, they'll be able to operate via MCP. They'll be able to operate any program, any application that has a platform interface, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because otherwise they're limited to using, crude operating system level primitives to try to click mouses and stuff,
Right?
click mice and keyboards,
or Puppeteer.
So now Puppeteer type things. So now everybody who's smart enough to come up with like a REST API or some sort of way in a gRPC or something into their application so that you can manipulate it programmatically, which, if they got the platform message, most of them do, it's going to be able to run your, your music software. It's going to be able to run your, whatever, all of your software. And that's just incredible, right? Because now it's not just a coding agent. It's an assistant, a true assistant, that can assist you with all kinds of, tasks that you have every day as a developer. Just like I started the show with, it was a new kind of task that I gave Claude this morning, right? Which was, or last night, which was go find out why this is slow, right? Which was just, man, that was cool.
Mm-hmm.
Right now you can tell it, go use Final Cut Pro to eliminate all of the ums and ahs from my, right? And if there's a way for it to manipulate the thing, it can go do that for me, right? Mm-hmm. So I think we're moving quickly in a direction where we're all going to be paying hundreds of dollars a month for these operator type, agents, because it's going to save us more than that in terms of time, right, and money.
Yeah.
When will this hit the household? Like, how can like, let's just, I mean, obviously this is a software podcast, but like, how do everyday households change? They want to be more efficient. They want to have more fun. They want to go on more vacations. They want to enjoy their lives and spend more time together. How does this impact a household? Or is that not even worth talking about?
Did you ever read There Will Come Soft Rains by Ray Bradbury?
Mm-mm.
All right. Well, everybody who has laughed really hard just now.
Okay. All righty.
I'll take your word for it.
What's the laugh? Tell me. What's the joke?
It's a story. It's not obvious from the beginning of the story. It's a story about a house that's intelligent and it's doing things for its owners. They're not there. There's a twist.
Don't plot. Yeah, you ruined the plot. I guess.
It's a twist.
Story.
I said there's a twist. There's a twist.
Okay. There's a more twist.
Oh, another Ray Bradbury's greatest hit came up recently. The Veldt. It's some song or something. Oh no, it wasn't that recently. It was Dead Mouse. Yeah, Ray Bradbury. He was a good author. You gotta go back and read some of his stuff. Wait, what was the first Ray Bradbury story I said? It was.
Well, you're talking about the house.
Yeah, house. Well, if you ask Apple, Siri Intelligence is here now. Did you hear that senior VP got fired? The senior VP of Apple Intelligence got fired, or Siri, I think, because somehow the sales and marketing teams did that thing that they're not supposed to do, where they go and sell something that engineers haven't built yet.
Oh yeah.
And Apple, you would think, would know better by now. And so, its heads rolled.
They forgot.
Because they were like, it's going to be in your house and you're going to be able to do it. All the stuff we just talked about.
Well, they put out commercials.
And they were promising it for basically right around. Yeah, they did. Oh, man, they're still recovering from that mess, man. Siri Intelligence. So, so not this year, apparently. And I know the Alexa team's struggling with this too, right? I'm sure they have a mandate to get LLM-based Alexa out there because Alexa is stupid. And they've talked about it. It's already in open beta or something. But, right. I mean, to what extent can you, tolerate, an Alexa that could, potentially, teach you how to make meth or something? I don't know. Something bad, right?
Well, especially at that scale. I mean, when you have failure modes in small scale, a 1% failure rate's not the end of the world. But when you're in every house in America and around the world already, and they're all talking to Alexa, that 1% hits millions of people. So
right.
So a lot of large numbers holds them back,
Yeah. So, and we've seen some situations, right, where I think there was a case where an LLM talked somebody into suicide.
Yep.
Right. You don't want Alexa doing that, right? So that's why actually having this stuff in your house, in that sense, is still a ways out. It probably at least 2 years would be my guess.
Yeah, well, my kids talk to Alexa all the time, and one of the solaces I have with it is how simple and basic it is and just stays that way. Because if it goes beyond, all of a sudden it's like much
It's
better. And now I'm actually, as a father, more worried and want to be more involved in those conversations because who knows, So it is a higher risk factor there.
Well, this is another one of those things. It's not related to coding, but it's another one of those things that worries Dario about tech pushing society harder than it wants to be pushed, right?
Sure.
Is at some point AI is going to start making its way into our lives in ways that some people don't like.
Yeah.
We've already seen it with the memory stuff, right? Some people like that it has memory of you and some people don't.
Right.
And it's already bifurcated into these two big crowds of they want anonymous transactional interactions versus they want a best friend,
Well, that's why I like it's a mode now, right? And in both ChatGPT, I think Grok has it as well, where it's like forget me mode, or I don't know. It's like an incognito tab, basically. You can you can have it remember you, because that's actually very useful that it knows certain things. Like, for instance, your schedule, when it's trying to give you advice on things, like to know that you do this every day at this time.
Yeah.
But then there's also times where you're like, I just want that anonymous transactional answer to this thing, and I don't want you to add this to my personal profile, because
right.
Most of the time it's because it's completely like a non sequitur. Like some of the stuff that you look up, or I ask a thing, or I'm like, please don't put this on my profile because I'm asking for somebody else, or they're like just completely free from context.
Amazon has that problem, right? You buy one gift for your niece or nephew, and all of a sudden they're showing you kid stuff forever, and it's like, no.
YouTube has a problem too. Like I got a mechanical failure on my kid's 4-wheeler. And so I'm trying to figure out how to fix it. And all of a sudden it thinks I'm a 4-wheeler enthusiast. And it's like, no, I just wanted to fix this problem. Now it's fixed. I don't want to see another 4-wheeler video ever again. So that's a hard problem.
You know what? That's interesting enough. You should get somebody on this show to talk about what's going to happen when, just the general problem of how this stuff is going to interact with our kids and with us. And
yeah, that's the concern. I think that's the concern that you alluded to earlier that's why I asked the household question, because I know it's not, we're excited about the step change we can do in our day jobs or in our visionary missions, how we want to frame it, that we can now go so fast and command agents or babysit, depending upon your perspective. Is that how does like household or society get impacted? And literally last night, my son asked about, I forget what he said it was called, but he said there's an AI that he wants that doesn't tell you the math problems. He was like selling me. He's like, Dad, it won't tell me how to do 1 + 1 or whatever the multiplication is. It won't tell me what the answer is, but it'll be my friend. It'll be something I can talk to. And I'm just like, how do I answer this? How do I respond to this? I'm like, listen, I don't know yet. Let's look at that. But at some point, we're going to have this conversation with our loved ones, old or young, about AI, about what it truly is, how to leverage it, and I think at this point, it's just sort of a guess what it really is and how we'll use it. There's trepidation in my heart when it comes to how it will impact my kids. But at the same time, I think I can keep them safe to some degree, but at some point, the steamroller of life will bypass dad, and I can no longer be the guardrails of my son's ability to have access to this tool. Who the heck knows, So it's like one of those things where you sort of get to this position where, we're using it in great ways in our careers, and we're seeing tremendous results. But then it's, how does that impact our households? And then that's the fabric of society. Like, that's where neighborhoods are born, is like my household, your household, boom, friends and neighbors,
Well, I never had kids. I would not want to be a kid today. It sounds really tough. Good luck.
Good luck. Good luck. I actually think I would be excited to be a kid right now.
I mean, it's like the best of times and the worst of times.
It is. It really is. I would like it. I would, if I could be born today and be, I don't know, 10 years old, 12 years old, right? In this moment, that'd be kind of cool.
But you're going to be born at the age of 10. This is a nice thing.
You know what I'm trying to say? Like, if I was born in this latest era and I was now, and I was 10 or 12, the experienced, somewhat wisdom-filled person that I am, or at least I feel I am, I'm kind of hopeful about a 12-year-old's life in the future of this world. I think there's a lot of cool stuff that's going to happen that we just can't see because we're held back by the bounds of the past.
Well, you asked what's the point, Jared. Yes, what's the point of all our work? And the point is everything gets better. Just like when I look back to when I was a kid, like in the 70s, it was really crummy and everything was just really crummy and boring, right? And now everything's really bright and shiny and fun. This today is going to look like the 70s in about 10 years.
Gosh, it's so wild to think about that. Like I watch movies or older movies that have like older cars, 80s cars even, not even 70s cars. You're like, what a weird era. No one was on phones. You had to go to the pay phone to call somebody if you were not at home. And if you were at home, you had a 30-foot phone cord because that phone went the whole house, even upstairs with this long cord. What a different era, really. It was just almost yesterday.
And El Caminos, man. What a crazy time. El Caminos.
Right.
Who thought of that?
Well, are they making a comeback or something?
Oh, I don't know. I'm just saying, going back to the 70s and 80s and just think about some of the cars. They're just
my buddy had an
wild. Great. Oh, they were real popular for a while. All right. Well, things are getting better. Steve, let's check back in. Obviously, the book will be out sometime this fall, it sounds like. September, maybe. You don't know. You're not in control of that. But we'll help share that around when it ships.
I can give you a link and you can pre-order it on Amazon.
Oh, there you go.
I think that'll get you some early content. We're working on it.
That's all well and good. We'll link that up in the show notes. But then let's check back in. I mean, 6 months from now, you're saying it's going to be radically different in 6. Let's bring you back on the pod and talk about how different it is. Maybe 6 months, 8 months away.
Let's say Sounds November good. 19th. What are you doing November 19th?
You're going to book it right now?
That's just in time for Christmas. It's just a few weeks before,
right before Thanksgiving.
You did say we're going to have some Christmas presents, so looking forward to it.
It'll wrap the year up for us.
There you go.
Yeah, interesting. I wonder if we'll be on Claude 5 by then. I bet we will.
We'll see.
Or we might be broke by then. Who knows?
Claude 6. All right, guys. It's been a pleasure.
Yep.
As always.
Thanks, Steve.
Absolutely. Thanks, Steve.
Bye, friends.
Bye, friends.